If you are truly ready to never unsee unsettling bath time sequences, deeply uncomfortable moments of intimacy, and some completely outrageous reveals, then let's take a closer look at those 2023 movies that contain demented events you won't be able to get out of your head. Oh yeah, and some major spoilers ahead, of course. So I'm Gareth here from WhatCulture.com, and here are 9 crazy 2023 movie moments you'll never be able to unsee. Number 9. Modok Debuts. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Easily the most deranged occurrence within this Quantumania flop came in the form of the arrival of the villainous presence known as Modok. Said well-known Marvel figure was actually the first Ant-Man flick's Darren Cross. You know, the bloke who dons the yellow jacket suit. And while the idea may have seemed fun on paper, the way it was executed is enough to keep you up at night for an entire MCU phase. Though that's mostly due to Marvel Studios seemingly not giving their VFX teams the sort of time or cash to produce something that doesn't leave you cringing. Specifically, the moment Darren explains how he ended up in full Modok mode after being saved by Kang the Conqueror contains one of the most unexpectedly absurd shots of the year, with the camera lingering just a little too long on the tiny ass of this underwhelming antagonist. Quantumania will definitely go down in history as one of the most disappointing Marvel Studios projects to date, but at least it contained one memorable moment, even if it was for all the wrong reasons. Number 8. Talking to Riley, Talk to Me. Away from some of the utterly horrendous glimpses of hell in Danny and Michael Philippous's chilling directorial debut, Talk to Me, it's the first moment Mia's best mate's brother Riley is possessed after finally being allowed to touch the mysterious hand at the center of the story that really sticks with you post-viewing, with it already being established that a handshake with this object, along with uttering the words "talk to me," will result in the person involved briefly communicating with a dead person, and even being possessed by them after saying "I let you in." The innocent youngster is soon dragged into a horrific sequence. Despite initially agreeing to only allow Riley to stay connected for 50 seconds, instead of the usual 90-second limit, the fact Mia's deceased mother Rita shockingly ends up sitting opposite Riley leads to the shocked daughter trying to keep her around for as long as possible. Sure enough, the time limit being exceeded then results in Riley being frighteningly taken by the spirits. The unsettling, never-ending seconds of the young lad spluttering, the sudden, violent way his head then collides with the table, the grotesque visual of Riley trying to yank out his own eyeball, and the bloody attempts to end his own life due to the demons within will not leave your mind in a hurry once you let them in. Number 7. The bear chases down an ambulance, Cocaine Bear. On those few occasions when the coked-up American black bear is fully unleashed in Cocaine Bear, Elizabeth Banks' film offers a few glimpses of the sort of chaos that got people in theaters to watch it to begin with. The most shocking and grotesque moment of drugged-up violence goes down when this particular bear hunts down an ambulance desperately trying to escape its wrath. With Depeche Mode Just Can't Get Enough providing the soundtrack for the murderous frenzy, paramedic Tom is disgustingly ripped apart by the high-flying bear as an injured Ranger Liz falls face-first out of the ambulance to her death. And if all that mayhem wasn't enough for you, the other paramedic, Beth, then gets sent crashing through the windscreen to her own doom. Cocaine Bear may not have contained quite as many absurd moments of violence as folks were anticipating, but this brutal ambulance ride was certainly an unforgettable highlight. Number 6. The ear rip, Megan. During the robot doll horror treat that was Megan, the artificially intelligent doll decides to punish the bully targeting her precious Katie by ripping the little punk's ear off. And while the theatrical version of the sci-fi horror opted to cut away from the sickening moment Brandon says goodbye to one of his lugs, the unrated Megan feature certainly does not. In that much more unforgiving scene, viewers get the full experience of Brandon's ear being slowly peeled from his young skull. The fact Megan then goes on to chase down the terrified bully like a robotic golem, and ultimately causes him to get run over by an incoming car is also fairly disturbing. But it's that disgusting attempt to teach Brandon an agonizing lesson via ear stretch that was scorched into the minds of audiences who caught the unrated Megan experience. Number 5. Finding Rita, Killers of the Flower Moon. Martin Scorsese's latest instant classic known as Killers of the Flower Moon certainly isn't an easy watch by any means, and one of the more distressing things to go down on screen during the harrowing tale focusing on a string of Osage murders and the white folks trying to steal away their money occurred after one of said killings. In the wake of Molly Kyle's sister Rita being killed in a planned explosion that saw her home being shockingly destroyed by AC Kirby, as organized by William Hale and Ernest Burkhart, the moment she's found amidst the flames is about as upsetting as it gets. Lying in a seemingly and surprisingly peaceful state, the horrifying reality of the situation soon becomes apparent, as Rita is lifted by those trying to save her. The dreadful sight of the back of her head gruesomely falling away as she's raised rocks you to your core, as Ernest takes in the awful situation he helped create. But Rita's traumatic murder is just one of the many reasons Scorsese's masterpiece sticks with you long after the credits roll. Number 4, an uncomfortable testimony, Oppenheimer. Not one of the folks heading into theaters to witness Cillian Murphy's stunning performance as the titular theoretical physicist, or Christopher Nolan unleash an atomic bomb on the world, were prepared for the way the director would execute the first sex scenes to ever pop up in one of his films. A few passionate moments with Florence Pugh's Communist Party member Jean Tatlock had already established the pair's affair on screen, but one of the many scenes involving Oppenheimer's AEC security hearing brings a far more shocking and uncomfortable piece of intercourse to audiences' eyes. As Oppenheimer is questioned about said affair and his ties to the Communist Party by the United States Atomic Energy Commission, the historical figure is suddenly seen sitting completely naked before Jean ultimately appears and proceeds to do the deed in front of all in the room, including Oppenheimer's wife. Nolan has since noted how he wanted to really get across how strange and awkward the moment must have been for all involved, with Oppenheimer genuinely having to discuss these intimate details in front of Kitty and being quote-unquote split open for all to see in that room. Job done then, Chris. No one will be forgetting that shocking interrogation and surreal fantasy coitus in a hurry. Number 3, impaled on a table leg, The Killer. As Michael Fassbender's assassin engages in one of the most brutal and well-choreographed skirmishes you're likely to watch all year, in David Fincher's latest thrilling picture, The Killer, things go south pretty quickly for the Floridian trying to keep the titular figure down, with the pair clashing inside of the brute's home after the killer successfully tracked down one of the people responsible for attacking his partner Magdala at his own place. It initially looks as though the cold and well-prepared assassin has bitten off more than he can chew. After being smashed into wardrobes, TVs, and launched around the house like an empty tracksuit though, a flipped-over table soon leads to an agonizing opening for the killer. Booting the big lad in the balls just as he looked to put a bullet in the assassin's head, the killer decides to nudge the brute onto a chair leg, quite forcibly. Not content with leaving you scarred at the act of a dude being stabbed through the arse by a chair leg, however, Fincher then opted to follow that nasty piece of improvisation up with a revolting trail of blood as the brute wanders right into a permanent snooze courtesy of the killer's pistol. Lovely stuff. Number 2, J. Law's Naked Brawl, No Hard Feelings. Without doubt, the balmiest moment of 2023's sex comedy No Hard Feelings took place after Jennifer Lawrence's Maddie Barker and the lad she's being secretly paid to date, Andrew Barth Feldman's Percy Becker, opted to go for an evening skinny dip in the ocean. Things then get a little bit nuts after a bunch of teens come along and decide to nick the pair's clothes. Big mistake. Instead of asking politely for the youths to return their clothing, a completely naked Maddie royally kicks their asses, chucking sand in their eyes, booting them in the groin, and delivering a mean suplex to those rude youngsters. Who had that on their 2023 movie bingo card, eh? Fight scenes simply don't come much more outrageous and wacky than this, and Lawrence fully committed to one of the craziest and most unforgettable sequences to fall out of 2023. Number 1, Slurping the Bathwater, Saltburn. The sight of a person making love with a grave and completely stark naked dancing through a manor all pale in comparison to another absolutely jaw-dropping scene in Emerald Fennell's Saltburn that involves Barry Keoghan's Oliver Quick and a bathtub. After Jacob Elordi's Felix Catton decides to pleasure himself in the middle of his bath time, an infatuated Oliver who had been secretly watching said act go down eventually decides to take a closer look at the tub once the coast is clear. Then, as the last of the water drains away, Quick proceeds to slurp up the leftovers like a parched warthog visiting the local watering hole, producing audible gasps in theaters all over the planet during a first watch. Fennell herself classes this provocative moment as the sexiest thing I've ever seen in my life. Whether you agree or disagree with that bold statement though, it's still safe to say you'll never be able to unsee Oliver having a quick sip of bathwater within the Saltburn estate.